Hey everybody, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY channel. How's everybody doing on this Tuesday? What's today? August. What is it? What is today? Today is the 12th, August 12th, guys. Once again, this year it's almost Christmas time, man. I mean, wow, it's just things just keep flying by. Time waits for no man. Anyway, guys, today's topic I thought it was interesting. Lately, I've been covering a lot of stuff that's been happening in the world of home improvement, the news and all that good stuff. So this is what's trending today. I came across an article about a lot of home improvement companies going bankrupt, ending up in bankruptcy court. How does that happen, guys? You hear a lot about bankruptcies, and that sometimes that's an escape hatch in a sense to save your business from having to have all their assets seized, right? So it's kind of a safe haven. I mean, it's not foolproof because I think you have to still pay your creditors over time or something like that, but it's kind of put on pause. But lately, a ton of home improvement companies have been going bankrupt. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? The economy, in terms of inflation and the tariffs and all that stuff. And these are very physical product intensive companies, right? Flooring, lumber, places like that depend on a lot of shipments from overseas or even domestic shipments. And the prices just shot up because of everything that's going on. So I figured I'd dive in and explore what's happening there, and we can kind of talk about it real quick. But let's see here. Let's dive in, guys. It says, okay, why does a company go bankrupt in the first place? Let's get the basics out of the way. It says when a company files for bankruptcy, it's pretty much cannot. What's wrong with me today? Cannot pay its bills, okay? Cannot pay its debts or obligations. And the inability for a company to do that, okay, leads to what's called insolvency, right? They're no longer solvent. So there's a couple of reasons that could have happened, right? It could have been bad management. Cash flow management is a big deal when it comes to bankruptcy. Somebody's not handling the cash flow right. That company could be profitable too. It doesn't have to be a company that's not profitable. You could have a very profitable company go bankrupt because of bad management. Okay, companies that fail to track and manage the flow of money in and out of the business can quickly run into liquidity issues, right? Like I said, they can be profitable but still run into this stuff. Okay, late payments from customers. Okay, overspending on expenses, right? Without sufficient money coming in. All this can lead to cash flow problems, which can eventually crumble the business, right? So that's one. Excessive debt, right? Everybody knows, even in our personal lives, that when you're saddled with debt, that's not a good feeling, and it can cripple you in so many other ways, okay? So this happens for businesses too. A lot of people think, oh, businesses always have money come in, but a lot of these businesses, they were founded or created with a lot of debt, right? They took out loans or, from banks or other investors. And, they're some of them may be just running on fumes or barely breaking even, right? And so excessive debt is a big reason why a lot of companies, cut for the bankruptcy court and try to, solve the problem there, right? Poor financial planning, a lack of budgeting, good budgeting, comprehensive budgeting, as it says here, forecasting and resource allocation can leave a company vulnerable to unexpected costs or market changes. And that's why you see, in the news, like some CEO of a company who's just been there 3 months, 6 months is gone right after that 6 months, right? Because their leadership in terms of forecasting, or forecasting what's coming up for the company, or what they should do, the direction that they should head in, it's being poorly chosen. Okay. And that can lead to problems as well. Right. So they all tie into each other, whether it's cash flow management, excessive debt, poor financial planning. And then there's some outside factors that you can't control that can lead to a company going into bankruptcy as well. Changing market conditions and competition. Right. That comes with the territory. Right. It says businesses that fail to adapt to evolving market trends. Right. How many of you guys seen businesses that never jumped on the internet train, right? They stayed like the magazines or something. They stayed with paper, physical paper, and they never started a website. Or they got into too late. They realized, oh man, I should have been online. And then the companies that jumped online and restructured their whole format to be online succeeded, right? Passed them up because they got that market share. All the eyeballs were on computer screens now, not reading books and magazines. Okay. So once again, that's a leadership issue, right? You should be able to forecast things like that. You should be able to look at trends and see what's going on out there in the world and say, oh, we need to be ahead of this thing, right? That's how it works. Okay, what else? Consumer preferences, disruptive technologies. Once again, the internet, like I just said. Right now, in today's age, that would be AI. You see everybody jumping on the AI train, right? Because they know that if they don't jump on that and learn to master it, or at least incorporate it in their business models now, they will be left behind. Okay, so that's today's example. Okay, let's see. Insufficient market demand. Okay, it says investing in products or services which there is insufficient market demand can lead to wasted resources and declining sales. So, that calls for constant looking at your analytics and seeing what's trending, what's not, what should be on the shelves, and what needs to be taken off of the shelves. Because every whatever inch of shelf space is valuable, right? For example, when you're putting a product, trying to get a physical product on the shelf, and say one of these big box retailers, they're not just going to put your product on the shelf. They got to see what's on the shelf already, and they got to make the decision as to whether your product will outperform what's already on the shelf. Otherwise, you're not going to get on the shelf, or you may get a spot in the store, but on a maybe below eye level, right? Because I think eye level is the most valuable level, right, in terms of shelf space. It's been a while since I studied a retail game, but yeah, all of that matters, guys. All of that matters. It's a lot of intricate details when it comes to retail and marketing and all that stuff. Operational and management issues, ineffective leadership and management. I just talked about that. Poor decision making, lack of experience, or strategic missteps can undermine a company's ability to navigate challenges and achieve growth. Hey, I don't even need to explain that. It said it right there. Overexpansion. Yeah, this is another thing. A lot of companies, they get some initial success and they say, oh man, we're going to pour some money. We're going to spread. We're going to go to this state. We're going to go to that state. We're going to have 20 stores instead of 2. They get overly excited because of their initial success. And that can lead to some very, they can lead to a lot of operational challenges. Okay, not to mention logistics. Okay, because and then when things don't work out like they planned, they're left with all this stuff, right? That's of no use now, or at least it becomes more of a liability than a benefit. Okay, and then they have to sell stuff off, or reduce or downsize, lay people off. All that stuff costs money. Okay. This can lead to a company going downhill as well. Okay, let's see. Operational inefficiencies. It says production delays, supply chain disruptions. Well, we saw that happen a few years ago with the pandemic. I mean, supply chains all over the world were disrupted. A lot of companies suffered. Right. I was in the logistics industry back then. In the trucking world, and even the transportation industry, logistics suffered greatly. Okay, a lot of truckers were laid off. There was no work. Everything was slow. All the ships were stalled in the ocean because of what was going on. So those are things that you cannot necessarily predict, and you can only somewhat prepare for. Right? You can't prepare for everything, but you can, based on what's happened already. I'm sure there's a lot of companies now that probably buy more than they need, more inventory than they need from overseas, just in case things like that happen. Okay. Let's see. What else? More external factors: economic downturns, legal issues and compliance failures, unforeseen global events. I just talked about that. We don't have to rehash that. I kind of touched on that already. So let's talk about some of the companies, guys, that have took a nosedive and ended up in bankruptcy court. There's been quite a few. I was kind of surprised. Let's see here. Well-Made Floor Covering International. They filed for Chapter 11 on August 4, 2025 to sell assets following a law enforcement raid. Now, was that a raid having to do with the ICE raids? I think so. I think it's a possibility there. I think ICE was involved in some of these raids of these companies. True Value. I just talked about True Value on the other live. They filed for Chapter 11 on October 14th, 2024. So this is very recent, okay? They did it to sell assets to another company. It says independent True Value stores are not affected except for one company-owned location. Okay, so I think True Value is more probably a franchise, has the franchise building model going on. So that's interesting. The independent stores weren't affected, but the company did sell assets to another company called Do It Best Corp, and I don't know if they're going to take over the franchise model in some way or not. That's a whole other story there. There's a company called AFH Air Pros, Go Lab, Timber HP, Gardner Supply Company, LL Flooring. They also filed. So all these companies filed for Chapter 11. LL Flooring was known as Lumber Liquidators. Guys, remember the Lumber Liquidator commercials? Well, that's LL Flooring. I think they were bought up by a private equity firm, and now that private equity firm is going to bring the name back, Lumber Liquidators, if I'm not mistaken, as I did my research on this. That's right. It says the firm that acquired it will reopen under the original name Lumber Liquidators. Okay. And there's another company called At Home. That's a home goods store. Okay. Just found out about that. And they filed for Chapter 11 this year, actually. And they're planning store closures to restructure debt and get new financing. Closures eventually reached 32. So they had a bunch of stores out there. The company mentioned tariffs and lower consumer spending as factors. McAmmon's Irish Market, that's a garden center. They also filed this year. Actually, last month they filed. And then Mosaic Companies, a tile and stone company, filed for Chapter 11 as well to sell assets and liquidate other businesses. So yeah, guys, Chapter 11 bankruptcy has saved so many people, right, from getting their assets seized. It gives a company time to sell off its assets, liquidate stuff, so it can, I guess, pay some of the creditors that it owes. And yeah, it's interesting that all this is happening. All these companies, these home improvement related companies, are just taking a nosedive, and you know who's going to scoop up some of those assets, right? The big guys, Home Depot, Lowe's, maybe even Ace Hardware. I talked about Ace Hardware in another live, how Ace is being pretty nimble with its creative strategies and surviving in this what is it, cutthroat home improvement market. So yeah, it's like, I guess it's, for home improvement or Lowe's, it's like, hey man, we got a sale. This stuff is going on sale. Let's grab up some companies here, right? And I'm sure that's what's going to happen because they keep their eye on it. It's almost like the big eagles looking down and saying, oh, these worms are scurrying to survive. Let's see which one we can pick off. And that's what's happening out there. Very Good Life Note says, sometimes companies filed to renegotiate debt and leases. Interesting. Building leases or equipment. Yes, that's an interesting strategy right there, Very Good Life Notes. Yeah, it's not always the fact that these companies, like I said, some of these companies are profitable, right? But they use the bankruptcy court as a strategy. Like she said, to renegotiate debt and leases. Chapter 11 is designed to keep businesses open and get debt lower. Absolutely. They don't necessarily have to close. Sometimes they do, right? Pregnant Life Notes. Sometimes they have to, though. I mean, like I said, the Chapter 11 gives them that time to restructure and do all that stuff. Maybe find new investors, find new buyers. But if that doesn't happen, as I think it did in the case of one of the other companies, then they pretty much go insolvent or they get dissolved, and leaving scraps to pick up. It's almost like a car, right? Like, once a car is pretty much done, people come for parts, right? So yeah, it's the same analogy there. Let's see what else I can talk about in terms of this. Yeah, let's see what happened with lumber liquidators here, or what's used to be lumber liquidators turned to LL Flooring. Now it's back to lumber liquidators. Their bankruptcy happened about a year ago. Okay, like I said, on August 11, 2024, which resulted in the company closing down. Okay, and then let's see. They got bought up, and like I said, it doesn't really go into much detail about what really happened to them. True Value, what happened? Let's get some more detail on that. Says True Value and 7 affiliates, which provide wholesale hardline products to 4,500 independently owned retailers. Wow, they got a lot of franchises. They filed for Chapter 11, and they sold their assets to Hardware, Lumber, and Building Materials Cooperative Do It Best Corp. Talked about that. This is pretty much a repeat of what I just said here. I'm looking at another article. It's pretty much repeating what I said, what I covered. Yes, but in Well-Made, that company Well-Made out of Georgia, they have the FBI and ICE investigating them. I think they were Chinese owners, and it says that they were possibly engaged in alleged labor trafficking in connection with the recruitment of Chinese residents to come to the U.S. on L1 visas to work for Well-Made. Well, so in other words, they were pretty much smuggling people in under these L1 visas just to work for them. Interestingly enough, it says no criminal charges have been filed against them, and no criminal charges have been threatened, according to what it says here. Yeah, so guys, yeah, that's another option for a lot of these companies. A haven, a legal haven for these companies to, like Paragraph Life Note said, to give them time to restructure their debt, and maybe sell off some assets, find new buyers, restructure their leases, different things. And we hear about Trump and what he did, over his career. And a lot of people call Trump like an idiot, but I mean, he was just using the law to keep his business open, keep his doors open. And so I don't know if he was that much of an idiot, but I mean, these things exist in the law for companies to survive, right? Because they it's almost like a lifeboat in a sense for a lot of companies. And why not use them, right? Why not use it? I'm not saying that you should be running into bankruptcy court over and over again. Something's wrong, then you're just pretty much using the system. But I'm sure a lot of companies do that, right, to escape further punishment or hits to their wallets. And I don't know that bankruptcy Chapter 11 saves you from everything or shields you from all your assets not being seized. That's another discussion, but maybe Paragraph 11 Notes can answer that. Is Chapter 11 foolproof, or are there holes in it that a company's assets, or maybe even their personal assets, can be seized? I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, but it's out there, guys. So yeah, I mean, the economy is a big factor, I would say, in a lot of these companies going under and or seeking shelter, especially with the tariffs and all the stuff the new administration is putting on them. So that was to be expected, in my opinion, right? It was just coming. So unless you got the big pockets like Home Depot and Lowe's, right, that can survive these tumultuous times and all these tariffs and stuff, then you could possibly end up in bankruptcy court. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Anyway, guys, that's it for tonight. Something interesting to talk about. Hope you learned something from it. And I will see you in the next one. By the way, guys, check out calibrate.com. Okay, if you want to support the channel. I'm also on TikTok as well. TikTok and Instagram, Calibrate Tools and DIY. Look me up. Okay, I think TikTok is about to change it. It's coming next month. TikTok, I think, is going to turn into something else. I don't know, some other platform or something. So go check me out there anyway, okay? Regular Lagno says, typically unscrupulous owners reallocate personal property before they file. Yeah, so much stuff done behind closed doors. Very interesting. That's a whole other topic there. That's a whole other discussion there. Maybe I have to bring her on to explain it. Anyway, guys, have a good one. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.